We are live.
If I could be you, if you could be me for just 1 hour, if we could find a way to get inside each other's mind. If you could see you through my eyes instead of your ego, I believe you'd be surprised to see that you've been blind. Walk a mile in my shoes. Yeah, now. Walk a mile in my shoes. Before you abuse, criticize, and accuse, walk a mile in my shoes. Greetings to you all. Greetings, folks out there in webinar land. Welcome to tonight's webinar version of the Irondale Ensemble Projects to Protect, Serve, and Understand. My name is Michael David, and I'm the musical director of this project, known to those of us on the inside who know it and love it as TPSU. Music is one of the ways that this conversation that we're having happens within this project. And there might be some more music as we go. So just hang out and listen in there, okay? So now, without further ado, I would like to throw it to our executive director, Terry Grease. Mr. Terry Grease, take it, baby.
Thank you, MD. Hey, good evening, everybody. Thanks for joining us on this snowy, cold night. I'm Terry Grease. Welcome to our third webinar performance workshop featuring To Protect, Serve, and Understand. We would like to acknowledge that we're streaming from Brooklyn to New York, the ancestral land and territory of the Lenape Nation. As we come together tonight, please take a moment to consider the many legacies of violence, displacement, migration, and settlement that have brought us here. If you're joining us for the first time, some background might help. This program, created by the Irondale Ensemble Project Theater Company, started 5 years ago. In response to increasing levels of tension and distrust between police officers and civilians, we wanted to see if the techniques in an actor's toolkit might be one way of bridging the communication gap. For the past 5 years, on Tuesday nights for 10 weeks at a time, officers and civilians learned how to improvise, to sing, to tell stories, but mostly they learned to listen and to really hear each other. We broke bread together, we argued, we spoke about injustice, racism, privilege, and often we came to a greater understanding of each other. Agreement? No, not necessarily. Understanding was the goal. We try to bring people who are polar opposites in their beliefs about each other a little bit closer to the equator. Over 100 officers and civilians have gone through this program, and almost 3,000 people have borne witness to it through performances. Tonight, you'll see how we make the sausage. This will be part workshop, part performance. A police officer and a civilian will play each other, using only each other's words. You'll watch as the officers and civilians interrupt the monologues. They argue with them, they question them, and they use them as part of a larger discussion about policing in America today. The key idea for tonight, both for our players and for you in webinar land, is listen for understanding. Throughout the evening, we're going to ask you to participate in polls. Your answers will be totally anonymous, and it gives us a sense of who you are and what you're thinking as you watch this. So let's go to one now. The first one we've got is about citizenship. How often do you think about your responsibility as a citizen? And we're not defining citizenship with immigration status. All the time? During election season? during crises like 9/11 or COVID. Maybe you never think about it. And maybe you don't understand this question. That's okay. So we're waiting for these votes to come in.
I know you want to leave me, but I refuse to let you go. Just a little music, pole music. If I had to beg and plead for your sympathy, I don't mind, 'cause you mean that much
So we
to
got
me.
71% of the people who have voted. 75% voted. And place your votes, everybody. Going once, going twice. And let's share our results. So 59% of you think about it all the time, 20% during election season, 17% during crises, and 2% and 5% I never think about it. Well, it's great. You know, it's interesting because we think at Irondale, the ensemble thinks of itself and the people in it think of themselves as citizen artists. This project was really created as our response as citizens, using the skills and talents that we have to what we thought was a crisis. So citizenship is an important part of everything we talk about at Irondale. It influences all of our work. I'm going to throw this now to Rivka, and thank you.
Thanks, Terry. Hi, everyone. I'm Rivka Rivera. I'm an Irondale Ensemble member and a TPSU facilitator. Now, the work of TPSU is collaboratively created by the participants, civilians, police officers, and the TPSU facilitators. The NYPD supports officer participation in the program, but the content you're about to hear is guided and directed entirely by Irondale facilitators. As facilitators, we come to this work with a range of experiences and political points of view. We offer no agenda other than a belief in the tools and power of theater to help us to listen, to understand, and to sit in complexity. Now, without further ado, let me introduce you to your wonderful cast. CB.
Here come off flat top, he come grooving up slowly. He got juju eyeballs, he's one holy roller. He's got hair down to his knees. Got to be a joker, he just do what he please.
Leanne.
Here come us white folks playing the woke Olympics, saying Black Lives Matter, and we think we just got it. We cry our white tears and think we've learned all we need. White fragility in the year 2020.
John.
Here comes white bigots, they come marching up slowly. They chant Black Lives Matter and scream F the police. Now I don't know what they mean. They never cared about the Black community.
Jorge.
I got all my gear on working, all these hours walking over bridges, guarding Dolce & Gabbana. They say, take our streets back to fund the police. Throwing bricks and spitting disrespect is extreme.
Serena.
This is a revolution. This is a time for change. My people, they are crying. There is no room for shame. George Floyd and Farrell too. Without the videos, what would we do?
Helen.
You think I'm racist 'cause of my blue shirt. You say you're victims, but you attack the peace. I hear you scream, defund police. Well, I'm not gonna kneel for you, 'cause I too am free.
I say Black Lives Matter. You say law and order. We cry, say their names. You say you're not to blame. 2020 has us all on our knees. Got to get together, 'cause I can't breathe. Come together right now over me.
Awesome. Thank you. Let's pull up another poll. And we're going to be coming back to those song verses as well. All right. Where and how have you engaged with people with different opinions? Mark any or all that apply. I don't. I try to educate them by sending news articles. I dialogue in social media comments. I pray for them, or other. And if you're other, you can throw that into our chat. We want to warm that chat box up because we'll use that a lot throughout the evening. Or other. And this is a conversation that we have often throughout the workshop, because this is what we're here to do. You know, a lot of us have come to these tables when we're in person over our dinner table, or come to this virtual table, and we're hearing opinions. I'll speak for myself. I'm hearing opinions that I don't hear in my bubble. And so this is what it's all about, is how do we engage with people with different opinions? Oh, I'm seeing some good ones in the chat. I'll ask them about their views and why they think the way they do. I listen to them and try to understand their perspective. Okay, 65% of our vote is in. We're almost there. Meet people with different opinions at church, and I interact with them by asking them why they hold their beliefs. All right, put your polls in. We're almost there.
Oh, since my baby left me.
Get your polls in, or Michael David will keep singing.
It's down the end of lonely
All right, let's
street.
close the polls. We're in now. And direct contact and conversation in every way possible every day, especially in everyday activities. Great. And let's see those poll results. All right. 23% I don't. 50% I try to educate them by sending news articles. 25% I dialogue in social media comments. 18% I pray for them. And 32% had given us others. I synthesize our arguments within the framework of state violence. Awesome. You guys are, I love how much you're participating in this chat box. Keep it up. I'm going to throw it back to MD.
Thank you so much, Rivka. So tonight we're going to give you a Zoomisk taste of the full 10-week, 56-hour workshop that happens. And so we're going to focus on these three exercises, okay? The interviews, which may be interrupted by other cast members commenting on what they've just heard, or who knows, you might hear some other musical tidbits. Uh-oh.
Here you are.
Oh, there I am. Oh, there I was. There I am. I'm going to play peekaboo with you. Peekaboo. I see you. Okay. So, yes. So let's, we're going to focus on those three exercises, the interviews, cast members commenting on those interviews, or what they've just heard, or you may hear some other musical tidbits.
So exactly. So tonight you'll hear from police officer Helen Tasis, who will play CB Murray, and CB will play Helen. And they're both alumni of the program, but they never met before a week or so ago. They interviewed each other, and those interviews will serve as scripts for their monologues. During the monologues, we'll get to witness in real time what both civilians and officers feel about what's being said. And they will check in with each other for understanding. And we want you to listen to the phrase, "What I hear you saying is," and how it becomes a way to know if what we think we're saying is what is being heard. The monologues will be punctuated. They're going to be interrupted by other participants in this dynamic conversation and original song lyrics until they're completed. Our hope is that tonight we can simulate the communal dinner discussions in our in-person workshops that we begin with in a way that we can all experience virtually. And we encourage you all to think about your own reactions and invite you to bring those, as you've been doing, into the chat box, into the Q&A, and we're going to talk about those in the post-performance. Terry.
I'm going to keep myself hidden here And I'm going to ask everybody else except Helen and CB to stay off camera. Helen and CB, come on camera. And we're going to do a little bit of warm up, just the way we do it in the theater. Let's start by focusing on our breath. And I invite you out there in Zoom land to do the same thing. Just focus on your breath. Close your eyes. Sit comfortably with your feet on the floor, hands on your thighs, and just breathe. Give that a second. So good to breathe. Now, that blank screen behind your eyes, think of it as a movie screen. And on that movie screen, I want you to see the image of someone you know, but not quite so well. So, Helen, I want you to see CB there. CB, I really want you to see Helen. See them as much as you can, as clearly as you can. Repeat their names. Folks at home, choose somebody you know somewhat. Maybe you want to know more about that person. Like a mantra, repeat their names and send those names like a psychophysical signal through your entire body. If your mind wanders, use the word listen as an alternate mantra. Listen, listen. And Helen, I'd like you to take your camera off, and CB, let us hear Helen's words.
I was a participant in round one. I live in New York. Sometimes traffic into work gets to me and I question my life choices. When will Jesus give me that lottery ticket? This is my 7th year on the job. I started a little bit later in life. I wasn't a 21-year-old academy kid. Oh, especially, yes, we are on 24/7.
Hold! I got all my gear on working all these hours.
We are on 24/7. That's the toll it takes on family. My husband, the first couple of years, he didn't believe I was at work. I would have to video chat him. I'm like, dude, I'm really at work. But CB, he's European. He's like, but family. And I'm like, they don't care. But tell them you have children. I said, they don't care. And then just making sure everybody's okay. They were flinging water bottles at us.
Hold! Throwing bricks and spitting disrespect is extreme.
Plastic nonetheless, but still a water bottle? And I know as a person, I would never let anyone throw anything at me and not react. But as an officer, I was instructed to, nope, just sit there. I was like, this is wrong. This is wrong. Why am I allowed to be a victim because of this uniform? They were saying because of what?
So I feel like there are times, all the times, that the community become the victims. So now it's a different story. But all the times, we're always supposed to take it. You take the instructions, the demands, and never is it with a polite request.
So what I hear you saying is that the victims, that you yourselves, the community, feel like you're being victimized by the police, and we don't know how to deal with the truth.
Not only are they victimized, but that's on a regular basis, right? This is not. So now it's the police officers. What I was saying is that the police officers are trying to now sound as though they're the victims. And in fact, the community all along are victimized.
So what I hear you saying is that us as police officers, we don't really deal with the communities, such as events and neighborhood barbecues and national night out and coffee with a cup and PAL and kids playing softball with cops. We just don't deal with the community.
I didn't say that. I said that the community is often victimized. I'm not talking about the feel good things, the things in the park. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about day to day people are victimized by the police.
So what I hear you saying as day to day, people are victimized by the police.
Yes.
Okay.
Why am I allowed to be a victim because of the uniform? They're saying because of what you do for a living, shut up and take it. Don't react. The precinct where I did work, the 88th, their van was set on fire and the officers' personal cars were vandalized. I'm like, why? What are you? They tried to take over the precinct. I'm like, what are you going to accomplish? What did they accomplish in Seattle? What is the end goal? And that's what I want to understand.
Oh, you think they care about the Black community?
I can't work from home. Come hell or high water, I have to. They stuck us in buses, 40 people. What the hell is the social distancing? Where is my safety? I have elderly people around me. And why? Why is it okay if I get COVID? We had officers pass away. I was very sick. I had bronchitis. It didn't matter. I had a friend, an officer, who had a severe heart condition. Did it matter to them? They're like, nope, you're a number. I understand. And I'm a huge believer in democracy. And I love.
Hold. I think what we've had in America in particular is the illusion of a democracy. I don't think it exists, and I think our law enforcement officers often use that language, or perhaps we use it in like public spaces a lot. And I have a really hard time grappling with that.
So what I hear you say is that it's a misconception of democracy, so that police officers will say, right, or function as though, or appear to, that it's democracy, but in reality it's not.
And not even just police officers, maybe like the state in general, like public offices say that too.
So what I hear you saying is that not just the police officers, but the state itself, like all over, not just the police officers, right?
Yes, that's what I said.
Yeah. So I happen to agree with you. I think, but also to take it to the next level, I say that the police, or not only the police officers, democracy is for certain people. So people that look like me, I don't see where democracy works so fairly and evenly and just. I don't really understand it.
I heard you say you don't understand democracy from where you're sitting, your personal position, and from your life perspective, you've never believed in democracy. Is that what I heard you say?
It's not that I don't believe in democracy. I don't see it. I don't see it. From where I'm sitting, I don't see it. And I'm sure many who look like me don't see it either. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, from your seat and your perspective, you don't see democracy.
You got it.
So what I hear both of you guys saying is, Leanne thinks that there's an illusion of a democracy and it's being put out there by the state, law enforcement, and everyone, and it's not a true democracy. And Serena is stating that for people like her, democracy doesn't function how it says it's supposed to function.
You got it.
Yeah.
I will have to sit here and disagree. I think we are in a true democracy, and there are countries that are like under extreme oppression, and it's pretentious a little bit to me that we don't see the democracy. There's people that come here that don't know the language, can't speak, don't know how to speak or read, write, or do anything with English, and they don't have citizenship, but they can make it here. This is like a land of opportunity. That this democracy is not oppression. I don't see it that way.
So what I hear you saying is that people that come here, it's a democracy because people could come here and build their lives here, right? From other countries that don't have democracy, and they could come here and they can actually make it, and so that makes it a democracy. Is that what you're saying?
Yep.
Okay, well, I disagree with I disagree with that. I'm going to add this little piece onto it. Is that, listen, we don't even have to talk about the people that come here. Now, let's even if we don't talk about that, let's talk about the people that are here, that built this country, built this nation, and are discriminated against on a day-to-day basis, just on the color of their skin. So I don't understand the democracy that we're talking about when, people come here, and yes, there is a land of opportunity here, but what about the people that are here? What about the people here? What about the people who are discriminated against on a day-to-day basis just for being Black?
So what I hear you question is putting immigrants aside, the people that come here and that are native to the country, what about their opportunities? What about democracy for them? And immigrants see it as a land of opportunity, and the Black community sees it as daily oppression, or they're oppressed.
Yeah, I'll take that. Thank you, sir.
Okay.
I'm a huge believer in democracy, and I love the country. And I know that when you become a part of this country, you give up a little bit of your sovereignty for the greater good, correct? When you become a resident of New York City, you give up a little bit of your sovereignty because you now become a part of a more exclusive group. And it goes on and so forth. Every group, you give up a little bit more of something, be it financial, your rights, and so forth and so on. In order to be a member of the NYPD, you give up a lot of your sovereignty. And it's not something I was aware of going in. It's not discussed. It's a discovery process. But this lack of consideration for me as a person, I never expected that. It's supposed to be the Blue Brotherhood. I have a bone to pick with the Blue Brotherhood. I'm a sister. And I'm like, where is the human component? You believe, from what I'm hearing, that his actions were racially motivated. In this particular case, I saw a cop who did something inappropriate. It's one thing when you physically have to take someone down. They were given certain training. They're like, okay.
Hold up. Talk about that training. I must say, I took that training and it got me very angry and frustrated as I was sitting there watching videos of what we can do and what we cannot do anymore.
Holds. So what I think I hear you saying is that when you yourself was in training, you were confused and it got you frustrated because there were things that you could do and that you couldn't do, is what they showed you in training.
No, not exactly. What I'm saying is that when I took that specific training in regards to the new laws that New York State and New York City put into place, in regards to us not being able to put a knee on somebody's back or lay on their chest or lay on their back while we're trying to subdue somebody who's resisting arrest, that's what the frustrating part, that's when the frustrating part came in. When I was sitting in that training, watching the videos of what we can do and what we can't do anymore. Because I think that's bullshit, and I'll explain why.
Okay, so what I think I hear you saying is that you got frustrated behind the things that you can or you cannot do, but you're going to explain that at a later part in this. You'll explain why you were so frustrated because I guess you felt you have limitations based on what they told you can and cannot do.
In regards to the training that I'm talking about, for me personally, to respond to a job and a perpetrator decides to resist arrest. Now we're in a struggle. I end up on your back. We're fighting. I end up on your back. I touch your chest. I touch your back. Now I'm the one getting charges. Now I'm the one getting a misdemeanor. Why? Because I accidentally touched your back? Because I accidentally laid on your chest while I'm trying to handcuff you? I'm supposed to dance around you like a ballerina trying to handcuff you because I can't touch your back? Just go for the legs. Go for the arms. It's bullshit, because us as officers, if we're in that situation and you're fighting me and I end up on top of you and you don't even end up with an injury, just the fact that I put my knee on your back to get your hands behind your back, I'm getting charges. That's what I'm trying to say.
Okay, so I think what I hear you say is that your frustration is because you're being asked to do things a certain way. And when you are in danger, you think that those things should go out of the window because you're trying to subdue someone or to save your own life or to make sure that you get through the day. Is that what you're saying?
It's not when I'm in danger. It's just a process. It's a tactic. So it's not necessarily that I'm in danger. It's just the fact that you could accidentally end up on somebody's back and it could be unintentional, but I would still get in trouble for it. I would still, and it's not even just in trouble, it's criminal charges. I'm gonna lose my pension. I'm gonna get sued because you're fighting me because you're resisting arrest and my knee touched your back when you didn't even get hurt. That's
what I hear you say is that even though it could be something just accidental and you could be held accountable for that, and you find that to be frustrating.
In regards to the new laws, yes.
Okay. So I would say this. I would say that the problem with that is that the way that things are done and who they're being done to. Those are two major things. And at what point do officers become the judge, the jury, and in many cases, the executioner? And that's where the problems lies. Not in that line about whether it's accidental or not accidental and charges or not charges, but that people are actually dying in the process.
We as officers have long been trained not to use chokeholds and not to kneel, sit, or stand on people's backs or chests. So we're not talking about me intentionally hurting you or killing you or being out there looking, oh, who am I gonna attack next? When we respond to a job, we have some type of basic background in regards to what we're responding to. So if I'm responding to a job and it has to deal with a weapon, such as a bank robbery, such as a domestic violence case where the victim has told us already that the perpetrator has a weapon or has owned a gun or something, we're already going to that job with the mentality that we might get into some physical struggle or a shootout, God forbid. So in regards to us doing stuff intentional or non-intentional, what I'm trying to get across is in regards to this session is just the training part. The new training that they're giving out right now because of the new law it's just fucked up. Because if I'm fighting you on the streets, there's no possible way that I'm not gonna end up touching your back or touching your chest when you're on the floor. And what I'm saying is that people are using this as a way to, you people say they don't know the law. They know the law because they're out there fighting us, and they know that if we take them down the incorrect way, we're getting in trouble for it. We're the ones getting sued, and you're the one getting a paycheck.
So what I hear you saying is that you should not be penalized, and the new law works against you. Is that what you're saying?
It doesn't. I'm not saying it works against us. What I'm saying is that the law is being used in a way that we can't really do our jobs. because the training we go through, there's somebody just standing there in front of me. Standing in front of me. Okay, put handcuffs on him. Struggle a little bit. Yeah, that's dancing. I'm talking about a real fight on the street when you have a weapon on you and you don't want to go to jail because you don't want to do life in prison and you're fighting me to death and I end up on your back. I'm going to get criminalized. I'm going to get a misdemeanor charge for that. That's what I'm talking about.
One last recap, Serena.
Okay, so what you're saying, what I hear you saying is that because things are the way they are, and that sometimes you can get into a real big scrap with someone, that you should not be criminalized for that.
If it's blatant, you know what I'm saying? If it's just hard hand cut, like, yo, that officer wasn't doing what he was supposed to be doing, then I'm not going to disagree with that. But when it comes down to just an arrest of me putting you on the floor because you're resisting arrest, and just by my knee touching your back or me laying on your chest because I'm trying to subdue you, for me to be, arrested for that, I think it's unjust.
That's great, guys. Let's go back to the monologue. We'll deal with this in the question and answer.
It's one thing when you physically have to take someone down. They are given certain training. They're like, okay, no matter what your body type is, as a police officer, wait, how tall are you, CB? 5'10". Okay, that's a little bit above average for the typical American man. You don't seem chunky. Oh, okay, no, you're still a respectable size. So you're not some little teeny tiny little dude. I'm a little shorter than you. I've had to tell people in uniform who are larger, sometimes very large, okay, I have to put handcuffs on you. And that's what they're examining now. What do I respond to? Do I respond to drug addicts, people who are emotionally distraught? Because, man, that didn't seem to be okay. He wasn't okay. Maybe they should launch other people to these scenes. Maybe that's the problem. Because this man seemed to be doing military techniques and putting, because that's not an illegal move in the military. That's how you subdue someone to keep them down. He did it maybe too long. Maybe that's what they're going to determine. That's what they said with Pantaleo, the officer with Eric Garner.
Hold. Pantaleo
was fired, and that's the officer that allegedly put Eric Garner in the chokehold. And I'm saying allegedly cautiously, because if you take a look at the hold, it wasn't a chokehold. And the only reason we're going to back that is because when the police commissioner was making the speech to fire Pantaleo, he said himself that he would do the same thing, but Pantaleo is getting fired for it. So if it was a chokehold indeed, why would the police commissioner come out and say, oh, I would do the same thing, but under these circumstances, we're going to fire you? So either you would put someone in a chokehold as well, or you know that it wasn't a chokehold, you're getting pressured from the administration, if we want to call it, and you had the job lined up, you threw the guy under the bus, and then you left.
That's what they said about the officer with Eric Garner. It's not so much because the technique, that's what I was taught in the academy as well.
Hold. I know that's what you were taught in the academy, but I guess like what I'm thinking is like, I think we need updates to those procedures, and specifically the physical holds that we have that officers employ when they arrest people. Changes need to be made. And just because somebody learned it at some point years ago, it doesn't mean it's safe or relevant now.
So what I hear you saying is that because officers were taught to use a specific technique, it doesn't make it right.
Yes, that's what I said. I want to add on though there, it like just that idea of change, like
Okay, it doesn't
moving
make
to
it
something
right.
different.
And moving forward, this is
Potentially no physical restraint.
oh, that's great thing to add as well. Potentially no physical restraint.
Yes, that's it.
I love it because I don't know how you will restrain someone without physically restraining them. And also, if someone was being taught this, then it was cleared by everyone and it's acceptable. It's not like the officer came on his own volition and did something. It was taught, it went through a curriculum, it went through little Department of Justice. It goes down the chain. It doesn't just appear. And to change it to something that we were not gonna put hands on someone, I don't see that. I don't, if I shot someone today, I'm not gonna just turn around and put my hands behind the back. Like, you're not gonna physically restrain me. I'm gonna walk away.
So I hear you saying that, all of these things that officers are taught, specifically restraint tactics were vetted, like they're part of a curriculum. They've been through many people, and I hear you saying like you see the need for physical restraint in certain situations, and that is a big reality of the day-to-day job.
Precisely.
Old. You're talking about change. You want to see change? It's already happening. You know what changes an officer's mind right now in this state of mind that the world's going, that this city's going through right now? You see it all the time. It's already changing. Cops ain't doing what they're supposed to, well, not what they're not supposed to be doing. Cops ain't doing what they want to be doing. For example, what changes that split-second decision that an officer makes, that split-second decision an officer has to make? You know what? You know who's changing that decision right now? You know the reform that's taking place right now? The media, the government, and look at our own mayor. Our own mayor is ordering suspensions of officers without even knowing the full story, without knowing the facts. So you see cops getting buckets of water thrown on them, and what do? They tuck their tail under their legs, under their feet, and just walk away. Buckets thrown at them, and they just walk away. Why? Because they're afraid to put their hands on people, because the government doesn't have our back, the mayor doesn't have our back. And we feel like if we put our hands on somebody, what? I'm in trouble?
You wrap around the shoulder and under the arm to try, to bring someone down. And they determined that it wasn't so much the technique, it was the length of time of this technique, that they should have lifted the guy back up so he could resume back breathing function. I don't know.
Oppressed people, don't you fall to your knees. We built this nation and deserve to be.
I don't know what's right. I fear that I may not be able to act appropriately and put myself and others in danger, because I'm going to start thinking logistically, well, what's allowed? What's allowed? And then my inaction will lead to a bigger problem or possibly get myself hurt. And that shouldn't be the case. That shouldn't be the case. I'm not saying neither party was innocent. George Floyd, I don't think should have been the poster boy for social justice.
Wildly unpopular opinion on the case that I don't think either party were right. I think when we look at police officers and we look at the community, I'm specifically going to mention the Black community. I think both both are their own worst enemies. Because you can't say that, to Leanne's point, you can't say you're a chief. You made these decisions. You make the decision of how tactics work. You can't tell me that putting a knee on someone's neck optically isn't going to look bad. And you had the opportunity to change it, but you never did. You can't get mad when the community is in an uproar about it, because you had the opportunity years ago to change it. And to the Black community, there is a big thing on accountability. We say Black Lives Matter, and to me, it's okay. Do it really matters to you? Does it matter to you when the homicide rates in Brooklyn and New York City goes up through the roof? Does Black Lives matter to you because you don't buy and shop at Black-owned businesses? And that goes for Black people too. Shea Moisture shouldn't be the only Black-owned product you own. So again, like, there's accountabilities on both sides, unpopular opinion, but I think both communities point the finger at each other when introspectively, they're both their own worst enemies.
There are innocent people who have died who are innocent, did not have drugs in their system, did not have a rap sheet. I don't know if he was necessarily the best candidate for this. There are people who have died unfairly, and I don't know. It's a very mixed up case. It's not very cut and dry. I don't know if the motivation of the officer was racism. He happened to be a white officer, and he happened to be a Black male. I've had white, mostly males, both Black and white, who have been in very similar physical condition, who you have to use force sometimes. And I don't know what the balance is. How can I know? How can you arrest someone and not touch their chest? What amount of touching of the chest makes it illegal? And when do I lose my job and I'm not able to feed my kids? You understand how this snowballs into what the heck am I doing?
Thank you, CB. Boy, this is hard work. You can see that. And I thank you for your bravery, all of you. This is really great stuff. Let's go to another poll, because I'm interested in people's personal experience with the police. As I said, most times when people come to our workshops, they have very little. So how would you characterize your personal experience with the police in any city? Is it mostly positive, mostly negative, somewhat positive, somewhat negative? Maybe you've had no contact with police officers. And only positive, only negative. Let's see how those answers roll in. It's amazing how sometimes you pass by people on the street, you pass by police officers every day, maybe they're in your neighborhood, and you have no idea about who they are. You've never said a word to them. We've got 67% of you have voted on this. We're not going to be looking for ballots in ditches, so just... Okay, 73% of you have voted. Let's see what the results are. So 40% say mostly positive, 10% mostly negative, 23% somewhat positive, 13% somewhat negative, 6% had no personal contact, and 6% only positive, and 2% only negative. So think about that. Did the results of this surprise you in any way? Or is this what you would have expected your neighbors and friends to put in this poll? I'd love to see some of that in the chat as well. Are you surprised by this poll? Okay, we're going to move on to Helen doing CB's words. Helen, go to it.
Thank you, Terry. I'm a writer, director, producer, performer. Charles Bernard Murray IV, but all my friends call me CB. I'm single, but I have 8 grandchildren. I know. My youngest son just had his 5th. I'm single by choice. Well, not by choice, but 2020 was like, and I had to take care of an elderly parent. My mom's 90. Yeah, so my whole thing was I couldn't let her get COVID, so I have to be super safe. I will say in 2020, with all the craziness that it's had, it's got the younger generation motivated to be a part of the democracy where they have not been for decades. I said, if you're gonna march, you just keep on marching to the polls until you get to.
Oh, they say, take our streets back to fund the police. Throwing bricks and spitting disrespect is extreme.
I work with a lot of young people, and I was able to say to them, run for something. If you don't like it, get involved with politics. And it was like, I will say that made the pandemic worth it. I mean, the death and sickness was not worth it, but to see these young people decide to become a part of our democracy, it means a lot because it's their world. It's not ours, it's theirs. And they have to inherit this. Yeah, there is a difference between reform and help and funding.
Oh, you mentioned reform and funding. I just want to say that defunding the police reduces funding for training that needs to occur to address the bad policing tactics.
So what I hear you saying is, if we defund the police, we're taking out the funds to train the police. Is that correct?
For the most part, yes, because defunding the police won't get us the proper, appropriate training that we're supposed to have, and it's already happening. We don't get enough training, I would say, because we go to the range twice a year, and there should be a lot more than that.
My statement is actually going to come over the question. What would be your ideal form of, if not training polices or making officers better? What do you think will help more?
I would say for every single officer in the department to get the same training, because not all of us get the same exact training. And there's a lot of good training out there that only certain officers get. They only notify a certain number. The whole department does not go through the same exact training.
And I'm going to put a thumb on the scale here because that's a great question that John asked, and we'll deal with that in the Q&A later with everybody. Let's go back to the monologue. Thank you, guys.
And, if you could get a social worker to show up with, all of that, but it was just a surge of misinformation, on both sides. And we know that some of it is coming from outside sources, and they're trying to keep us just marginalized. And that's been one of my missions, to break up that misinformation. It doesn't serve us as a country. United we stand, and divided we don't have an America. It would probably be impossible to ignore all the protests and everything that have occurred, Yeah, I think the whole world has seen those videos, So growing up in the South.
Oh, sorry. But you mentioned videos, and I just want to mention that the videos you see on TV are only one angle, one perspective.
One of the reasons I wanted to get out of Virginia when I did, because in the 60s and 70s when I was a child, it was very racist. It was very hard. But I had like a charmed life as a child in Virginia because I was a tennis player and I was trained to be a pro in my teens, and I was given scholarships to all the rich white country clubs in the winter to play tennis with their children. I lived in a very
old. This again goes to my point of America being a place that you can actually make it at I think the message really does get lost when we involve looting along with protests and stuff like that, and it loses sight of what the issue is, because again, we can solve the problem by actually investing in the Black community, in Black education, in Black housing, ownership. There's no reason, like in the day 2020, that we don't have a Black-owned Fortune 500 company. And it's, again, the community itself can help that happen. Jorge?
Disregard.
Okay. I came from a very, very poor neighborhood. So I got to see the two different lifestyles. And I was amazed by the night and day difference, the way home was and the way this world was that I was given privy to because of my athletic abilities. So, in seeing that and in seeing the difference, I was in a hurry to get out of the South and just not deal with it. So I came to New York thinking it just wouldn't be here, and it still was. And all of that to say that when I saw the footage, it just reminded me of home. So I was born in 1958. My Black aunt was married to a white man in Pennsylvania, and they could not come visit my mother because it was illegal to be an interracial couple. So they had to wait until I was old enough to travel up north for my family to see me. So all those memories flooded back. When I saw the footage, I guess the ironic thing to me was showing it was probably the best thing for our country. It allowed people who'd never experienced that, who couldn't comprehend what that was like, to visibly see it, to experience it. So whether you were like Black, white, Indigenous, Asian, you actually saw this. You could see the look on the officer's eye, who had no regard for how this man was feeling underneath him. I think, to quote something that's been overquoted, it woke people up. It caused them to say that this is true, this is real. It's an issue that we've been trying to avoid for 400 years. This caste system that America is built on, and so you can't fix something if at first you have to acknowledge it. It forced the whole country to say, this is real. It's not everybody, but this is real. Now, how we react to it personally as a group and move forward from there, that's the bigger issue. And as an artist, I want to know what I can create that doesn't make you angry. I want to create something that's going to make you want to move forward and change, do better. One of the things.
Serena, you could go.
It's time to get angry. We need to get angry. We need to all be angry. And to me, I think those who have the white privilege, right, utilize it. And I hope that people will get angry enough to stand up for what's right. We all should be angry. This is not the time anymore to just sit back or be complacent or thinking that someone else is going to make a change. We have to make a change.
So what I hear you saying is, it is time to get angry, to have our voices heard, to get the point across. And if that's the medium that makes it happen, then that the ends justify the means.
I think we should get angry. I'm not saying that the ends justify the means. I'm not saying that it's the only way to be angry, but there's ways to channel that anger, right? To channel it in a productive way. And for those who are white privileged, join us in that.
Okay. So I'm hearing it clearer. So what I hear you saying is, it's time to get mad, but channeling that anger and making it productive is what it's all about.
There you go.
All right. I agree. I think also, we're talking to the point, like, I watched a show called Schitt's Creek, and they had a great line where they were talking about sexuality, and the person said, I like the wine, not the bottle or the label. And I think it was interesting that he stated, I don't learn when I'm being attacked or I'm being yelled at or something like that. I learn when someone just shows me, explains it to me. And like you said, it's time to get angry, but channeling that anger, I think was important.
I hear you.
Okay, so one of the things I used to be vocal about with the NYPD was the fact that you guys, you don't get continuous training. I'm like, I have a real estate license and I have to go to school every 2 years to maintain this license. So there should be continuous training and learning for police officers. Because
when I hear that, it makes me think that there's no evidence between how officers with a college degree or an associate's degree or even a high school diploma, which other departments require, I don't see that there's any evidence that they handle jobs differently out on the street just because of higher education.
What I hear you saying is that there isn't any like marked correlation between like higher education and like better performance on the job, right? Like that education or lack of higher education isn't a priority in your mind.
I'm not saying it's not a priority because I came on with a bachelor's degree. There's always an incentive. You don't have to have a bachelor's degree to get on a job, but if you want to move up in rank, if you want to become a sergeant, lieutenant, or a captain, inspector, or chief, you have to have further education. What I'm talking about is that a higher education is not going to change that split-second decision we have to make when we or someone else's life is at stake. And I'm not talking about the George Floyd 8-minute, 47-second thing. No, I'm talking about that split-second situation we have to make as a human being that further education will never teach that. That you learn on the streets. That you have to make for yourself. And us as officers, we want to just go home to our families. So higher education is not going to change or make an impact, I believe, on that split-second situation we have to deal with when we're out on the street.
I heard you say overall that higher education isn't going to help you make those split-second decisions that you have to make, like in reality on the street.
Higher education will make you a better leader. When it comes down to shit hitting the fan on the street, just because I have a bachelor's doesn't mean the same cop with a high school diploma can't do the same.
So it doesn't really matter about the education, the higher education that you have. It comes down to those real life moments on the job. And that reaction time, that's what I'm missing. I think the split-second reaction time is not something you're going to learn in higher education.
Correct.
Okay. One of the things I used to be vocal about was the NYPD, they didn't have the continuous training. I have a real estate license and I have to go to school every 2 years to maintain this license. There should be continuing learning for police officers because like teachers have to have continuous learning and for real estate. So someone with a job as dangerous as yours should also be privy to that. Now, I think there should be a huge distinction made between the protesters and the rioters. There was just so much going on. It would always look so beautiful in the morning. And then at night, it would turn into a horror show.
Oh, disrespect and spitting, disrespect and spitting, disrespect and spitting.
I was hurt recently when I heard this evangelist say that Black Lives Matter was a terrorist organization. And I was like, dear Lord, that couldn't be further from the truth. But I was also angry when I saw looting. That made me angry. I mean, really angry. It ruins the purpose. This whole country was built from protests, and there has to be a right.
Can anyone explain to me the purpose of looting and how it solves anything? And why is it always the white doing the looting? And then it's misconstrued into the whole Black Lives Matter. I want to know why white people do the looting and what does it solve?
So what I hear you saying that is that only the white people are doing the looting during these protests, that they just go and break the windows of high expensive stores, and the white ones are doing the looting. The black people ain't.
I think I should rephrase inciting rather. Are the ones who incite the looting.
So from what I hear you saying is the protesting, the marches, they're all incited by white people, not black people.
No, they're not all incited, but I'm saying that white people incite the looting. And what, most importantly, what does looting solve? Like, what does it help you do?
But you're
In
saying
terms of your cause, like, what does looting do for the cause at all? How does it help Black lives?
so what I hear you saying is that it's not just white people, but for the most part, white people incent the riots and the looting. And for what? For what reason? For what cause? How is looting going to solve everything?
Yes.
Okay. Now, the right to assemble and speak, but like you said, they can't be the same thing. I know, I agree with you 100% that like once money and power get involved, everything goes awry. We lose our sense of humanity over money and politics and power just so easily. And like you said, it's those who are holding on, pitting us against each other to keep those positions. It saddens me when I see people on both sides using officers and civilians, psychologically brainwashing them into thinking that they have to be against each other, take this stance, this hardened, sometimes violent stance. You're being brainwashed, and by putting them together, they're just looking at you saying, keep doing that so I can keep making money off you guys.
Thank you. And we're going to come back, John. We're going to come back for more discussion. Amazing job on that exercise. As Terry said, we're sort of letting you see how this works through this. And performers, I think you did a great job. I realized we had never worked with the chat going too, and I just want to commend you for your focus on really listening to one another. That was excellent. We're going to throw in another poll. Poll master, wherever you are. There we are. And so this was brought up already in our discussion. What is one thing you would change about policing? Of the options below, which is, and it's cut off here, but which is most important? Would you change everything? Training, hiring, unions, accountability, nothing, or other? And when you choose other, just if you put it in the chat, make sure that you're sending it to panelists and attendees, and you can see that in your little chat box. It'll say 2, and you want to just click that. It'll give you a, there you are. It'll give you a place to scroll down. Awesome. And then you can reply there. And even as you're commenting, I think what's interesting is there's this difference between even how we're having this conversation with the structure of what I hear you saying is, and as we have the rolling comment stream. But I'll challenge our audience too, if you want to play what I hear you saying is in the chat box as well. It might interrupt how we normally throw things out, but please keep on playing with us. This is great. All right, 53% have voted. I'll give you a few more seconds and then let's see those results. And someone made this point as well. Again, this poll is just based on the demographics of who's in the room, who's in the space, of which we didn't do a poll about, so we're not sure. So that, of course, context will inform these polls as well, but it's just to get our conversation rolling. All right. So 31% of us said everything. 31% of us said training. 8% said hiring. 0% said unions. 23% said accountability. 0% said nothing. 8% put it in the chat. And we're getting a bunch of these in the chat now. So I want to invite our entire cast back out, and we're going to have a fuller talk back discussion talking about what this experience was like. The topic that we just had, we're just going to continue this conversation, incorporating what you guys are putting into the chat and still sort of keeping our, what I hear you saying, game alive. So does anyone want to take the ball on? We had 31% say that they would change everything. 31% say. We have a question from William in the Q&A. Oh, amazing. We have our first Q&A. Great question. I'll throw this to our group. Why is it not common practice to have police in place that are in front of the neighborhoods they serve, that are from the neighborhoods they serve? What is the What is the logic? What is the logic behind that kind of connection not being implemented? It would create a better rapport between police and their communities, and there still needs to be a better type of training that combines aspects of sensitivity training. And we'll throw this to you guys. And I want us also, we had this conversation yesterday about when we have these group conversations as well, what does it mean to take space and make space? And how do we balance that awareness in when we have so many of us having this conversation? All right.
If I may.
Go for it, Helen.
Okay. Hi. So as most officers who I've spoken to would agree, it would be fantastic if we could roll out of bed and be at work within 15 minutes with a shorter commute. It would be a dream job. But there are many reasons why we are taken from our native neighborhood and thrown into different neighborhoods. One is to decrease possible corruption, to keep a certain safety, because if I reside and my children go to school in the same area and I shop at the same supermarket and we run into each other daily, and then I have to also perform my function as an officer. I can't let you go because I know you. What accountability is that? I know you, I know you're a nice guy, but nonetheless, if you committed a crime, that's the whole purpose. That is the whole purpose. You have to maintain neutrality. You cannot do favors for family and friends and, oh, he's my neighbor, let him go. It doesn't work that way. It shouldn't work that way. So that's the reason that they don't allow us to work within our own neighborhood that we reside in. Although I would love it. And I'd still arrest my neighbor if I had to. I'm not heartless. But sometimes you just have to do your job. Like a teacher scolding a student or a mother putting her kid in the corner. It has to be done. There's a greater good.
I'm just gonna say there's another reason why I would consider it a bad idea. And it's because, Helen, you yourself saw the devastation, the criminal mischief, the vandalism that happened to officers' personalized vehicles that work where you work. So just imagine if I arrest someone that lives in the community that I live in. And like you said, they see me in the supermarket or wherever. Now they know where I live. They know where my family lives. So I'm not gonna wake up in the morning and see wheels on my tire. I'm gonna have flat tires, just like your cars had flat tires.
No, I understand that there's a possibility of danger, and there's a reason behind it.
I think another point that my view is a little different. I don't want to live in that community. I don't. I grew up in Brownsville, very close to East New York. When I had the opportunity to leave, when I got my stuff together and got my own place, I left. It's a different lifestyle. I don't want to. I grew up with it all helicopters all over, helicopters in the summertime. Someone legitimately got shot in front of my building on a summer day. We don't even care about it. It's whatever. It's whatever. Parking. There's wars with neighbors playing music loud. It sucks. Like you don't want to be in that kind of environment. When you move out of it, you're like, oh wow, it's actually it's decent somewhere else. But again, very true. Do I benefit from growing up in that neighborhood and knowing people and seeing the struggles and everything and knowing what they came from? Absolutely, absolutely. Do I want to still live in that environment? I'm being honest, I don't.
Can I talk about the second part of that question? Because he asked about the ongoing training. And I hear what Jorge's saying about split second decisions and having a street smarts, but I also think that everything isn't about, you don't always do training or take classes to get a degree. Sometimes you do it just to grow as an individual, to help you with your critical thinking, to help you deal with, say, domestic problems. We just learning something isn't always because I want a degree or a piece of paper. It's because I want to know more, and the more I know, it makes it easier for me to make other decisions. Because the way our brains work, usually we go one way because the brain works like a river. But when we give it other avenues, that it can think other ways, and sometimes as quick as just that one way. So we can see things in multi-dimensional ways. So when I say ongoing training, I think if you're going to be put into a situation that's dangerous, or where you have to deal with social work, or you have to deal with all these different things, everything is in split second for police. I don't think your whole 8-hour shift is split second. You have to make a lot of different decisions. And I think any kind of, having a continuous training is for everybody's benefit, not just the police officer, but the people that you would also be coming into contact with.
Absolutely, yes.
Muted. I'm curious for you guys behind that question as well. So I'm curious what your understanding of what that question is, of like why because I've asked that question as well before, why community members would ask for officers to live in their communities. What do you think that question is about?
It's from going back in the time when officers actually lived in the community. They had more of a community bond with the community itself. Now, look, if you have an officer who, he lives out in Long Island, and then you every day he drives into Brownsville, to a different environment that he's not familiar with, there's that whole fear that comes along with that. Maybe not even understanding the community at all, never connecting to the community, and also coming up every day thinking, I got to get strapped up, I'm aggressive. If you come out with that kind of mindset, that everything is about aggression, then that's exactly what's going to come inside that community. You bring it into the community with you. And if you're not familiar with that community, then that's when things go to the left.
I want to get into that because law enforcement agencies everywhere, including us, the NYPD, we engage the communities. Like, the community is able to come, and we host events throughout the year. As I said earlier, we host neighborhood barbecues, National Night Out. We have Coffee with a Cop. We have the Police Athletic League. We give out turkeys for Thanksgiving to that same community that was throwing bricks at us. We give out toys for Christmas. And you're telling me we don't do anything for the community, or you can't relate to the community, the cops and civilians? There's plenty. There's community meetings, and there's so much. And even after what we're going through right now, all the disgust people have for police, we're still out there trying to communicate with the community. Turkeys.
It's interesting. We're not talking about turkeys and we're not talking about turkeys and barbecues. We're talking about people who die. Right? That's a big difference between giving a community some turkeys and having a barbecue and putting your knee on somebody's neck. That's a whole different ball game.
I didn't hear the word die in what you said earlier.
And Jorge, we're not saying those actions and fundraisers and those attempts at community policing, like, we see those. Mm-hmm. That's not, like, the community is still largely dissatisfied, and like that's not going away.
I know, but the question was, why do you think people want officers to work in the community that they live in? So, like, what you were saying was, people want to relate and form a bond with the officer that lives or serves his community. They want that bond. They want to.
I said that's where it came from.
Yes.
That's where it came from. It used to be like that once upon a time. There were officers who lived in the community.
So that's why I went into the stuff that we provide the community to be able to attend to these functions and the stuff we do for the community. Halloween, we dress up the precincts so that kids could come and use it as a haunted house. Like, we do so much for the community and people don't see that. The media doesn't show it on TV. All you see is negativity. The negativity is what you're going to latch onto.
I want to throw in, we have a comment in the chat from Danielle, who was also a past, we have a bunch of alumni here too, which is wonderful. I believe the question.
Alumni.
And we will, don't let me forget, because I was going to do it at the top of this. I want you guys to introduce yourselves, because beyond first name, and let the audience know a little about what round you're in and who you are, but we'll get to that at the end. Because we are going to be ending soon, because we could do this forever, you guys. I believe the question is about knowing that police empathize with, understand, and care deeply about the people in the community as individuals. Coffee with cops is an important start, but it doesn't mean that the average neighbor and officers know each other on a first name basis, and that their kids go to the same school, and that they hang out at PTA meetings. It's totally different from just attending a few community events. So I'll leave that. Oh, yes, CB.
To that, I personally live in New Jersey, but I work in New York. But New York is somewhat of an anomaly, because in most of the cities that I've lived in New Jersey, the police officers actually live in the city with us. Like one of my best friends was a police officer in the city who lived across the street. So because the neighborhood was smaller and the way that particular police precinct worked, they lived in the city, so we knew each other. But New York is such a huge place. For example, I did, and I brought this question up yesterday too. It was funny, but I just had a memory. I did jury duty, and they brought in a police officer who was an undercover officer to talk about, it was grand jury, to talk about why they had brought up this case. And I recognized him. And then 2 weeks later, I was in ShopRite and I saw the undercover cop. And instinctively, because I'm crazy, I went to go speak to him, and he went, and I went, oh my God, he's surveilling somebody. And I just realized I almost blew his cover. So I see both sides of it, but that, you as a civilian, I believe in my heart that if there was more of a connection, it would be easier for us to communicate. But somehow in New York, there's such a disconnect. I remember in my round, one of the police officers said to me that his family would never come to Brooklyn where he worked, because they literally were afraid of that neighborhood. And
it's interesting, like the ideas of safety are opposite. Like, police officers don't want to govern in the neighborhoods that they live in, and it sounds like there's a want for officers to be in the communities that they live in, to serve in the communities they live in.
These are great points. I'm just going to pause us here to say, I got a tech alert. We may get cut off at 8:30, and we want to respect people's time, but we will probably stay a little over that. But why don't we right now take this moment? We'll go around. Yes, and we also have some awesome 2 more questions in the Q&A. But I do want us to go around and just say who you are, and what, if you're an officer, maybe what precinct you're in, whatever you want to share about yourself, but what round or what time you were also participant in this program. Let's go to Helen.
Hi everyone. My name is Helen Tasis. I work in the 84th precinct in Brooklyn. I was in the first round of Protect, Serve, and Understand. This is really fun. I'm struggling, trying not to say anything inappropriate, but I do hear a lot of hate, and it's hate, and it's a lot. It's very narrow linear view. And if you take a step back, you sing the song, Walk a Mile in My Shoes, but have you gotten out of your damn shoes and stepped into someone else for a split second? Just actually do it, because you're saying a lot, you're typing a lot. But can you possibly imagine being an officer just for a second? That's all I want to say, because I started this later. I've been a civilian I'm a civilian, 3 days out of the week. I have to do the PTA and the kids and build snowmen. And then I put on my uniform and I have a different function. But a lot of what I'm hearing is ridiculous. And if we were sitting one-on-one, this wouldn't be happening. we all get a little, webinar courage here. So let's try to be considerate, a little more humane when we're referring to our fellow people. We're not costumes, we're not uniforms. I'm not here to make your day. I have a job to do. You have a job to do. And if you're doing something stupid, I have to do it. Just a little more humanity. Thank you, guys.
Serena.
Hi, I'm Serena. I am from cohort 2 in 2016. So I'm here. I have two Black men that I raised, and I want them to come home at night. And so if you're not part of the solution, then you're part of the problem.
John.
Hey, I'm John. If you went to the last one, pre-COVID, that was me. I believe it was January 2020. Officer out of the 90 precinct. And I'm just, here to keep it real with you guys. Just let you know, we may be seeing this one way, but there's a whole nother side, and I'm probably thankful you guys aren't on that side of criminality with guns, drugs. It's just totally different. Just want to put that out there.
Awesome. And Serena was round 2. So we have a wide range here representing of our alumni Serenas, and that was 2016.
Mm-hmm. And I'm a civilian.
Let's see, Jorge.
How you doing, everyone? My name is Jorge. A lot of people know me by George. I was in round 5 back in 2018, and it was a pleasure. I enjoyed it. It got very personal, and getting to know the group and dining with them and sharing experiences with each other, I said things that not even my own family knows. You guys learned a lot about me, and just to be able to express myself and not hold back and not feel weird, me expressing my feelings to you guys back in round 5, it just meant a lot to me. So I'm an officer, I'm a sergeant, I'm an NYPD sergeant, and I protect and serve the mean streets of Brooklyn. And I have 21 years on, almost 21.
Thank you, Jorge. Leanne.
Hi, I'm Leanne Sawicki. I am an elementary school teacher in Brooklyn, and I'm a Poughkeepsie, New York native. I think it's my civic duty to be here, and I want the audience and the panelists to reflect on the times that we strayed away from the what I hear you saying and just jumped in with our own opinion. Right? When we were hot, when we were angry, we strayed away from that, and we weren't actually listening. And I think that's something pretty fascinating to unpack.
Thanks. And CB.
Hi, I'm CB Murray. I'm in the arts. I do a little of everything. But I was in the round 6, February of 2016, and I was graduating from school with a concentration in social justice, which is why I wanted to be a part of the program. And what I would say is it helped a lot, because what I saw was that police officers are many times pawns of the people who are in charge of them. And so they're following rules that are given to them from whether it be the mayor or whoever it is in charge of the police department. And a lot of times the anger that the community feels should be turned towards those people who are in charge, because they are pulling the strings per se. And it's an amazing way to start looking at each other, like Helen said, looking at each other differently. We're all humans, we're all people. We all have families, and we all have loves and hates and desires, and what we really want to do, like they said, is find a way to get along. And part of that is this does that for me.
Oh, I have a wonderful partner, CB. You're great.
Awesome. All right, we have, let's take two more questions. Is that where, will someone behind the scenes let me know where we're at with time? Are we good with that?
We're still here.
Awesome, we're gonna do it then. We have one question in the chat. Thanks to each of you for your time and willingness to find time for mutual respect and humanity. Question for the officers: is there a way to measure and define effectiveness of the effectiveness of a police department or precinct? Is there a model department precinct in America that you can point to that deploys that effectiveness?
I believe there is no model for an effective precinct like the way you're explaining it. There's different precincts. There's a lot of precincts, and each precinct covers a different neighborhood. So crime could be through the roof in one neighborhood, and the first precinct in Soho might have basically no murders, no homicides, just a couple of burglaries. So in regards to us measuring what precinct is the top and which precinct has the best officers, if that's what you're trying to ask, there's pretty much no way of measuring that. We just have CompStat. They call it CompStat, where the chiefs and captains get together and they compare what crimes go up throughout the city in each precinct, and they come up with ways to deter it.
You know, can I interrupt? This is regarding something that Jorge brought up earlier about the level of education compared to the correlate, what was it? How much education a police officer has and what effect it has on his job. I did read just one statistic on this, not overall policing, but it was regarding CCRB complaints. That's a civilian review board if there's a complaint lodged against an officer. All those statistics are on 311 app. So they did break it down there numerically. So you get a quantitative feel of, you know, what level of education, how many CCRBs. I don't know how beneficial that is for us, but that one thing does exist. Everything else, I don't know if they've sat down with pen and paper to break it down. It might be out there.
I think, and I wrote a paper on this for my grad program. CompStat, as he brought up, brings out quotas. So there's quotas, but it's not only with writing tickets, it's about, you know, getting guns off the streets. It puts pressure, and it comes from the very top. The mayor wants to say, oh, crime is down. So what does that mean? That crime has to go down. The numbers have to go down. The numbers have to get fudged. The rest have to go up. So it is what it is. To a certain degree, it's a game that we have no control over. We have nothing to say. CompStat there's no way to effectively measure it because you're measuring something that happened, crime today from 15 years ago, and it's not the same. And you can't expect crime to keep going down. And just because you want a percentage change over time, it's just going to force, you know, well, technically, was it a burglary or was it did he do this? Do you have keys? You know, you're messing with numbers, you're messing with livelihoods. And just for saying that crime is down, there's no way to like effectively measure it. How to get officers to do the best thing. Like the officers could just treat people the way they want to be treated. And they're under immense amount of stress because you're coming in every day. Patrol is always short. That means the officers that are actually going out there and making these calls and answering your 911 calls, there's probably like 8 per like square mile, while you have others sitting in offices just, you know, I call it jerking off, getting overtime, getting OT that patrol doesn't see. And who suffers is the people. If the amount of cops that are on this actual streets compared to the ones that are in units and ones that, you know, quite frankly, should be disbanded, because you have cops that are doing the jobs of ticket officers, but getting paid 3-4 times. Is it fair? No, absolutely not. How the community benefits is more cops out on the street, 100%.
You're not going to get that if you defund the police.
Well,
CB, you want to speak to that?
Yeah, that phrase was co-opted to mean something that it shouldn't have. Because basically when it was first brought out, that it was supposed to be to reform. In other words, bring in other things with the police that would be helpful. Like, for example, I think it was Helen said, maybe it's, if you know it's a domestic dispute, if there was more, if some of that funding could make a social worker or someone who was specialized in that go with them to that address, then we would have more than one version or one perspective of what was happening.
Or, well, CB, I would say not necessarily DV issues, but when it comes to people who are mentally ill or on drugs, the skill set and the frame within a police officer's duty is very limited. I'm not your psychologist. I'm not your Boy Scout. I'm not your mom. You know, I have a set function. And when I show up and you tell me he broke my phone and it's over $1,000, that spells a crime. I have to take you in. I don't want to. I'd rather go home on time, but that is what I have to do. So maybe the police officer is not the appropriate person to respond to that. If it's someone who has mental illness, maybe, you know, they try, I think they have some program with
already a pilot
Blasio's wife. It's a pilot program currently, or?
There's a pilot program going on right now where they're having not officers respond, but like social workers respond.
Maybe that would be best, because I'm not trained as a psychiatrist, and yet I'm dealing with a lot of people who are mentally ill, and I may misstep at some point.
You may have to be the one to speak that more than a civilian, because I mean, your union is supposed to be working for you, not you working for it. So maybe the whole idea is that when you realize that they're sending you to situations that you're not trained for, and you shouldn't have to
At all.
They should do something. They should send someone else, and that might be your sticking it to the union and not necessarily the civilians.
Wait a second. You on the police to give it to mental health. So what you're telling me, because I live in New York City, I pay in New York City taxes, is that you want more of my $850 million to get squandered by the wife of the Blasio's wife? So
No, not her. God, no.
I should put more funding, because she is gonna. That's what it was for. The $850 million that magically disappeared.
Yeah, I know. That was for the homeless. Now she's going to siphon another.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Let's not confuse the missing loot.
One thing with the, let's not get.
Let me do.
I got you.
So I'm just going to interrupt for a moment here, because as I said, we could do this all night.
Yes.
I want to read a comment because I think it speaks to a larger conversation of what we're doing here, and to what you brought up, Helen, as well, is like what these conversations are about. And to remind our audience too, we are doing this virtually now, but when we meet in person, this is usually like a 4-hour evening, and we do this over 10 weeks. So Danielle had said, listening is important, great point. And Helen has a point. If we were all in person, the discourse might be more civil. Nonetheless, we should be careful not to mistake righteous anger at an institution and the harm it causes for personal attacks against an individual. People are hurting all around us, so let's all try to be considerate of each other. And that just spoke to me. I just wanted to call that out, because I think this is where the what I hear you saying is helpful as well. I know I've used it for myself, is that often, and we also do another exercise where we do, it's called ranting, where we'll kind of take a minute and we'll rant in a really passionate way, you know, and that oftentimes I know I need the what I hear you saying to slow me down and to say, oh, I'm reacting to, I'm perceiving and understanding maybe something differently than what they're actually saying, because I'm having a reaction to a tone or something that I might be perceiving that might not even be what it is. So just calling that out, that stuff we tackle is, what does respect sound like? What all of these nuances in communication. So that's what we tackle in this work. And I know that we all so appreciate your courage in coming and having this conversation this evening. And it's 8:42. I know us, we could do this till 11, but I'm going to call Terry back in and Michael David back in, and we'll wrap this evening up, but we have more coming. So
although it's hard for me to come back in because my video has been disabled.
Oh.
Oh dear.
Oh dear.
That's a shame.
No, there we go. No, I'm cool. There we go. So, thank you for saying that, Rivka. You know, there's a listening and watching this conversation. And I was actually writing down all of the comments that were happening on the chat. And it was really interesting. Just a couple of these that just popped out to me. Fear and ignorance will create chaos most of the time. We can't fix a problem we refuse to understand or acknowledge. Critical thinking should be part of any police officer's training. And the one that struck me the most, let's all figure out how to be better. And I think that I know that a part of this work, and as you folks out there in webcast land can see, this is really hard work. It's really hard to be this present with each other when emotions run high, when the subjects are, life and death. It's very, very, very difficult to stay with each other. But that's what this project is about, is staying with each other, hanging with each other. That's all.
People often ask me, what have I learned from doing this project for 5 years? And I say the biggest thing I've learned is that there is something inside us that wants to reach out. There's something in our DNA that does not want us to remain in separate, isolated caves or bubbles. We really want to make the connection. And TPSU is a place where we can struggle to get out of our bubbles, our caves, our isolated areas, and start to connect with other people who we're not like. So I'm very grateful to have had the opportunity to work in this project. I'm grateful to have the opportunity to work with people like you saw tonight who, as everybody said already, are doing very brave work. And not just policing the neighborhoods, but this is the brave work. For all of you out there, I hope you can see that when the theater goes dark, the work continues. Tonight, we've tried to give you a taste of how TPSU works. In times that divide and isolate us, we're trying to continue the conversation that started here in our theater. And if this is something you want to be a part of when we go live again, contact us at tpsu@irondale.org. I want to thank all the people behind the scenes, Barbara, Tim, Ronnie, Max, Renata, who've supported this webcast, pushed the right buttons at the right times. And finally, I have to say this because I am the executive director. This has been a tough year for all of us, and all of us who work in the arts are particularly affected. Irondale is in the middle of its annual campaign, and every dollar helps us fight another day. So if this is a project you would like to support, I ask you to donate through our website, irondale.org. There's the link. Meanwhile, we promise you this work will continue. Thanks for joining us tonight. I hope you'll come back with a digital friend to hear more stories and continue the conversation. Good night, stay healthy, and have the best of holidays.
Keep peace, folks.
Night.
You all stay on, cast and crew, stay on.